Welcome to Verse Breakdown. My name is Awedawanomarin, and I want to talk to you about the verse Romans chapter 8 verse 6, where St. Paul told us, "For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace." First of all, I want you to know that being carnally minded and being spiritually minded are two different ways of looking at things, looking at life generally. Every single thing that happens in our lives, every single situation, every single event, every single decision that we have to make can be made carnally or be looked at in a spiritual light. Essentially, to be carnally minded is to think carnal. Everything that you see, the physical stuff in this world, which St. Paul called temporal in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 18, are what you generally live your life on. You prioritize carnal. But when we think spiritually, that mindset is transformed so that we think God. So like we think based on God's principles. Before we want to get married, we think about what kind of wife or what kind of husband God would want us to have. Every situation that we have, we make sure God is present in it. And we pursue God's will instead of trying to meet physical standards in this world. And talking about that carnal mind, St. Paul called people who think carnally natural. If you read 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 14, and such ones cannot think spiritually. And there he told us, "But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, for they are spiritually discerned." If you look at the story of King Saul in 1 Samuel chapter 15, that is a really good way of understanding what it means to think carnal. King Saul was in a situation where God told him to kill all the Amalekites and everything that they had. However, he saw all the beautiful sheep that they had and the amazing cattle, and he was thinking carnally. He could have thought spiritually by thinking about what God would have wanted him to do, which he explicitly told King Saul, but he thought carnally. But if you look at the story of Joseph in Genesis chapter 39, that's a good way of seeing how thinking spiritually works. Joseph was in a situation where his job was at stake. Potiphar's wife was coming to commit adultery with him, and he was like, what am I going to do? Should I flee, or should I just cave in and yield to what she's asking? He didn't think carnally and prioritize his job. Think, oh, okay, I'm going to lose my job of being a manager of all this good stuff, so let me just give in. No, he said, I'm going to think spiritually because I know God does not like what this woman is asking me to do. And then, of course, he did not yield or cave in. That's the difference between thinking spiritually and thinking physically. And, of course, St. Paul also added that to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Carnal things are temporal, as we see in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18. So when we invest in things that are not long-lasting, as in like they're not eternal, then especially in God's eyes, they're like nothing, because it's for 1 second and then it's over. But when we invest in something spiritual, something that lasts, because spiritual things are eternal, as we see in that same 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18, then we are like building on a rock, something that's steady and immovable. And that sense of assurance that we get from building upon spiritual things, called its laws, principles, etc., is what St. Paul meant by that kind of peace that we enjoy. Joseph had a lot of peace because he was rich and everything, and there was no enemy, as in like there was nobody who could really threaten his life, because mainly really as a result of what he did in that Genesis chapter 39. He was thrown into jail, but then he was exalted and became like never before. And that peace that we're talking about is the peace that Jesus Christ gives, not the world. If you read John chapter 14, verse 27, which passes all understanding, if you read Philippians chapter 4, verse 7. And that's where I think I'm going to stop on discussing the verse Romans chapter 8, verse 6, which once again reads, "For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace." If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. God bless you.